Welcome back, and it's series 4 of 100 Days In with me, Will Hall. This is the podcast where I speak with individuals in the startup world about how they would start a business today in the context of their first 100 days. And I say this a bit, to be fair, but this is a bit special, this episode. Why? Well, I speak with the founder of the Hungry podcast, Dan Pope. So Hungry was started during lockdown and has genuinely gone from strength to strength. He's spoken to over 100 founders within the food and drink world. Dan's mission is to speak to as many people as possible. Usually I would then reel off what founders he's had on. To be honest, it's probably easier if I reel off who he hasn't had on. Why is this episode of any value? And that's a question I do ask myself every single time I post. Usually a founder will then give their insight in 100 days in of how they started their company. But Dan is summarizing and giving to us the conversations that he's had with hundreds of founders. This isn't just one founder, this is hundreds of founders. And it's all packed into 1 hour. So I think you're going to love it. Throughout the conversation, it was hilarious. He was so much insight, very charismatic guy. I think you're going to really enjoy it. So without further ado, that's it from me. Let's get on with it. Roll the tape.
If you told me that 2 years ago, be like, yeah, these guys are going to reach out to you and say, can we come on? I've told you to fuck off. How are you so different that you create your own category of one? If you have a bad day, it's wipe up mentality. Tomorrow you start again from the bottom and you go. If you've had a great day, it's like, don't get too carried away. It's start again tomorrow. If I was in my first 100 days, in the first 20 days, I'd be trying as much as I can. So does this taste different? So different that people are like, I've never tried anything like that before.
Well, Dan, thanks for joining me. It's good to have you here.
Mate, absolute pleasure, Will. Thank you so much for having me, mate.
I was doing some notes beforehand and I was thinking, okay, Dan from the Hungry podcast, it'd be good to kind of list some of the guests you've had on in the FMCG world in the UK. But I think given the time we have, it'd probably be easier to list the guests you haven't had on. I was just looking at your Spotify the other day. You've had a very impressive selection of guests, mate.
I appreciate that. There's still loads I would like to get on and am endeavouring hard to get on. Logan from Beavertown, James Watt from Brewdog, Cassandra from Propercorn or Proper, whatever it's called. Yeah. The founders of Innocent, Richard Reed, Mike Cesario, I think it is, Liquid Death, and then there's Gordon Ramsay. That's going to happen one day. I believe that will happen. Jamie Oliver.
Yeah, I love that.
I think you need to have some. I have these North Star guests. It's just like I won't be satisfied till I get till I'm there. So it's like just keep. It's almost like it's that big, hairy, audacious goals thing. But I'm trying to think who else would I absolutely love to speak to. I think there's so many brands in America. Yeah, but those are the 5 that I'm like I'm trying to go for. So yeah, wish me luck. And if they're listening, then yeah, I'm here. I'm waiting.
I will physically post this episode to them just to maximize the probability they say yes. But it's amazing we're even thinking about these guests. At one point, right at the beginning, you would have had very little or no listeners on day one. So it's been 4 years. What's the journey been like over the 4 years? Did it meet your expectation? Was it harder than you thought in particular areas getting guests? Have you seen growth after 2 years suddenly and then it's gone up? How's that look like?
Begun is I was writing. I worked for an amazing peanut butter company called Manny Life. As soon as I left university, I'd always loved food. That was my calling. That was my curiosity. So I was like, I'm going to follow that. I can't be fucked with the whole corporate stuff. Just what didn't really float my boat. So I went into that and then worked at this peanut butter business called Manny Life. Amazing. Had an amazing team there. Literally saw that grow from nothing. So by the time I'd left there, we were in loads of retailers, Waitrose, Selfridges, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, loads. I mean, it's in Tesco now. It's an amazing brand if you like your peanut butter. Anyway, so that happened, and I was always writing. Like I write every day. It's again, it's a kind of a way. It's the way I can exist in the world is through writing. I mean, even right next to me now, I'm surrounded by like books. If you can see that, always writing. Anyway, so I started documenting everything I was learning at Manny Life. And I would just put it out on LinkedIn. I was like, well, this is what I've learned this week about sales. This is what I've learned this week about branding. I spoke to this person and I spoke to that person. This is what I learned. And I just kept documenting it. And I was trying to write it in a kind of irreverent, or not even trying to write it. It just came out of my soul in this kind of weird fucking irreverent style. It was then lockdown comes and I'm still writing and I'm like, oh, well, what's going on? Like, when's this going to end? And a guy called David Gluckman, who's got an amazing book, you should definitely get him on actually, called That Shit Will Never Sell. And he was the guy who created Bailey's. He basically worked for IDC, I think it's called, which was Diageo before it was Diageo, back in the 50s, 60s, created a whole, smorgasbord of brands. Trying to think of the ones he's created that you'd know. He did Tanqueray. He did. How else did he do? He did Cool Swan. He did Purdy's. He did loads. So I basically jumped on a Skype call with him. This is how rudimentary it was to begin with, and we chatted for 2 hours. It was quite easy during lockdown because there was no one was doing anything, and at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I've learned so much. How about if I just recorded that, then why not put it on YouTube? And that was literally it. And I put it on YouTube. I think we got like 10 views. It was awful. I was muttering my words, stumbling my words. But I was like, well, I fucking love that. So that's, Rick Rubin's got a quote, which I love, which is the audience comes last. And it's like, if you're doing what you want to do and you enjoy it, then you're going to keep doing it. Do you know what I mean? So that's when I was like, hey, well, I love doing this. Then if I just love doing it, and a bit like what you were saying before we hit record, Will, about I get to meet these people and kind of unpack their brains for their first 100 days of the business. It's like, even if no one listens, you still win. So I basically was like, I always set myself up for the smallest win. So the smallest win was, okay, who gives a fuck what the downloads are? If I'm meeting this person and I'm learning X, then that in the nutshell is the win. And that I still apply that today. So yesterday spoke to Oisin Rogers, who's the founder of the Devonshire, which is an amazing pub in London. I don't know if you've heard of that, doing the Guinness in London at the minute. But to get that interview, or that podcast, I should say, I reached out in January and it took 15 emails. I had to rely on my friend to help me get it over the line. He then said no, he was too busy. I then asked another friend to ask him. I then DM'd him on Instagram because he wasn't getting back to my emails. Then he didn't reply for a couple of weeks because this guy's just ludicrously busy. And then I basically just sent him a DM saying 15th 9 a.m. I'll be there, and he was like, done. And that happened yesterday. But when I boil it down, I was like, well, I've just met one of the most interesting. He's Irish. He's a raconteur. He's a storyteller, and he just taught me He taught me one amazing thing, which was a piece of wisdom from his granddad, which was avoid unpleasantness. 2 words, and that's just, fuck me. You're going to live a good life if you avoid unpleasantness. So the why, or not the why, but the small win is the small win equals persistence, but the small win hasn't changed from 2020 to 2024, if that makes sense.
It does. So it kind of jogs my memory when you were talking about your first episode. I think you may have had the same thing, but you are shitting yourself on the first episode. I remember you just want to get your questions out. I don't know if you did the same, but I had about 20 questions that I was just thinking, right, just reel these off and hopefully it sounds okay. And I couldn't even listen to what the guest was saying. I had a guy called Deepak who founded a company called Oddbox on. Did you have the same experience in your first episode? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, just completely fucking, touching cloth, shitting myself. And I think I always say podcasting is like a game of conversational chess, whereby you've got your questions here, you're asking the guest the question, and what you're trying to do is you're saying, well, I've asked person X. So I've asked Will X question X. I then have three options coming my way. I need to listen to Will's answer, and I need to think about where out of everything he says to me, what am I playing back? Where am I taking it next? What's sparking my curiosity? Is the first thing. The second thing is, where am I out of the list of my questions that I've got prepared, is which one flows the most in terms of the story arc? Because ultimately, I believe the conversation is the arc of the story. And the third thing is there something that's really I feel like I have to rebuttal or interject or build on? So you're constantly, it's a game of, as I say, it's a game of conversational chess. But to your point, Will, is the first time you're just thinking, you're just fucking flabbergasted. You can't even think. You're just, it's just, and that happened for me. That was the first 30 episodes. I wasn't even thinking. You listen back to it and you're just like, okay, that sounds somewhat okay. But yeah, you're just, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. The first 100 or so are you come away like, wow, that was intense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how I felt after. But you talked about small wins, and I so agree with this. And you've almost won before the podcast even goes out, because you've already had that conversation. You've improved without knowing, because obviously they're incremental improvements each time, but you've improved each time per podcast. So the way you ask questions, the way you, as you've just referenced, craft the story arc, the way you decide what to come back on and what not to come back on, and how you converse with your guest. I think like you don't realize how much you're improving in the first 10, 20, 100 episodes. But when you look back on it, you think, wow, okay, it is a great thing just doing something again and again and just getting better at it. So I think, yeah, there is a huge win before the podcast even goes out, to be honest.
Yeah, I think also it's just separating yourself from the work and or the art. If I think you almost need to see yourself as, which is very hard. This is not easy, and I'm guilty of not doing this. Well, as I said to you, I don't check downloads anymore because I became totally neurotic doing that. I was essentially attaching my self-worth to the downloads, and you can also you'll have an episode which you think is absolutely banging, and it will just won't do great, and you'll have an episode that you think's okay, and it will absolutely fly. So it's just create what you want to create. I almost have this thing. It's like, well, I've won now, and then it's up to the world what happens. As soon as you hit that publish button, it's like, take it, leave it, do what you want. But I think not being pulled by the downloads is one of the things that I've been trying to kind of mitigate.
I think maybe even after we finish recording, it'd be good to get some advice. I still do that. So I've deleted the app from my phone. I'm just looking at my phone now, but I used to have the Spotify Podcasters app on my phone. And honestly, it was like checking your bank account the day you're about to be paid. I was like going in it about 5 times a day at one point, but like, have I got any subscriber yet? So yeah, it isn't healthy.
Yeah, it's not healthy, and also it's like it's you can't measure your downloads. You can't measure your meaning, your value. Yeah. It's the way I talk about it is, imagine you run a race. Imagine you run a race with 150 people in it, and your PB, whatever the race is, say it's a 5K. Your PB is 20 minutes, and you win the race, but you're 1 second off your PB. And you can't even see the fact you're 1 second off your PB blinds you from the fact you've won the race, because you're thinking, why the fuck didn't I beat my PB? Why the fuck did I beat PB? It's like, mate, you've just beat 150 people in Richmond Park. The weather's amazing, but you cannot celebrate and enjoy that win because you're so maniacally obsessed with the downloads. And that's basically what's become, because someone may listen to your podcast and that may literally change. They're thinking of setting up a business and they're thinking, fuck me, I just listened to Will's podcast and that had the most amazing impact. I listened to, I don't know, someone on your podcast, and it changed the course of, it made my business a success. You can't measure that. And you can't, and this is what the hardest thing is, you can't really see the value you're creating. But what you can see is the narcissistic, neurotic download figures. So yeah, for your own mental well-being and to stay in the game long enough, you just need to just not look at it. Because I've fallen. That's kind of been a folly of mine, is checking them too much.
Yeah. I think one thing as well that I found, I don't know if this is the same with you, but I think one misnomer is that you need a massive following to get big guests. And actually what I found is, like, I don't have a big following at all. I've been going for about 7 months. So yeah, I'm still very small fry compared to you, mate. But you can actually get quite big guests on, even with very few listeners. I don't know if you experienced that at the beginning as well.
Yeah, I think it's all about how you ask. It's like everything.
Yeah.
I think podcasting is ultimately a game of sales. You're actually in the business of sales. So it's, trying to get people onto your podcast. Obviously, trying to monetize it is sales. And I think, yeah, it's all about kind of how you ask people, and also, again, sales. It's a volume game. Like, you've got to fire out a shitload of emails, shitload of DMs, and you're going to get bucket loads of no's, but that's kind of the way it works, I think. But also, I don't think, no, that's all good. I interjected there. I don't think it's, I think it was definitely easier getting guests on when I started, just because there was less podcasts. Whereas now it's like there are just fucking loads of, which is amazing. There's loads of podcasts, but it makes it, I think there's definitely more, people are getting asked way more than they were, say, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
That's fair. Do you see a big rise within even your sector? So you specialize in FMCG in the UK, is my understanding. Have you seen, and I've had a few guests on in that category, but I don't 100% specialize there. But have you seen a big growth in podcasts within that sector?
Who have you had on from FMCG, out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's a fair point. You almost putting me on the spot here because I've forgotten about half of them. So yeah, I appreciate. But I've had Harry Turpin from the Savorists. I'm just going through my list now.
He's amazing. He's a very good mate of mine.
He's a legend, isn't he, Harry? Yeah, he's a funny bloke. I've had, so my first guest was the founder of Oddbox. So I'm just going through my list now. I had the founder of Freddy's Flowers on. I know it's not, I don't think it would count as FMCG, but it's not far off.
Is that
Elite?
Is his name Freddy?
Yeah.
That sounds like a stupid question. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Elite, Hal and
they're amazing.
Yeah.
Well, they're already some amazing guests straight off the boot, mate. So well done.
They're a bit. I think people have mixed opinions on them. I don't know if I edit this bit out now, but the vegan brand.
Yeah.
Yes, Andy Shovel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had a few. I've even, again, I'm probably tempting fate now. There's Ben Branson. I've been speaking to his assistant for a while, trying to get him on. So maybe in the future with that one. So that there is a bit of overlap, but. Yeah, I think there's another podcast called Catch Ups in My Kitchen. Is that quite a recent one? I don't know. I don't know if you've been going.
Yeah, so Georgia, she's
been going
great.
As long as you, but
so I don't know how long she's been going, but she's really good. She's got she has like a health angle.
Yeah.
and there's a lot of FMCG crossover. It's interesting what you say about is Hungry an FMCG podcast, because I don't want it to be.
Okay.
I don't want to pigeonhole myself into that. Obviously, it is my heartbeat for sure, but I want to be able to expand my arms out into other fields. It'll always be food, but my my passion is FMCG, like 1000% I love the founder's journey. I love the creativity. I love the storytelling. I love the food, the products, getting into the supermarkets. I find that all fascinating, but I also want to know how a chef cooks his food, or chef cooks her supper club, or like, I want to slowly but surely expand the tentacles out, because I don't want it to be just an FMCG podcast. But yeah, Georgia, she's brilliant, and also what I like about her is she's super creative in terms of how to monetize. So I think what she's done is she actually works on behalf of brands and does a podcast for them. It's almost like so I think it's Spoon Cereal's the brand. She will do a podcast for them. And that's why I think it's interesting, is you can, again, be like water is the Bruce Lee quote, but you can be very malleable in how you monetize, which she's doing a sterling job of.
I think at one point you were, over the last 4 years, so you started it in 2020 is my understanding, but you would have been doing the podcast whilst having a full-time job. What was it like running a podcast with a full-time job? That's something I'm currently experiencing. And what was the transition like to doing Hungry full-time? Is that right? You do it full-time now?
Yeah, so I do it full-time. So so during lockdown, it was actually quite easy, because there was, if I'm being brutally honest, I was very lucky, because I'm trying to get hold of guests. I'm like, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, well, I know you're doing nothing. So come on my podcast, mate, because, what else are you going to do? So actually that was quite easy. If I'm just being brutally honest, it was relatively easy doing it in the evenings, recording in the evenings. Then obviously the world sort of clicked into, and to begin with, they were all very sporadic. It was, I would post 3 in a month, and I'd go without a month without posting, and then it was all. It's been going for 4 years, but I say it's been really going for since I went full time, which was September 22. So whatever that is, 18 months, maybe a bit more. Because that sounds like, right, let's fucking have it and really go for it. But in terms of doing it around a full time job, is so I always wake up early. I've always done that. So I would literally wake up at 5:15, do the podcast till 8, and then get on the bike and go to work. And then obviously you're kind of there on the email and stuff if anything's coming in, and you can kind of firefight that off. But that was kind of how I did it. I think it helped getting guests working for an FMCG brand, because it just did. It had a bit more kind of ease when you send an email saying, "Oh, hey, I work for this brand and we've had these people on." It just makes it slightly easier. And then leaving kind of the soft, warm bosom of my kind of job that I'd loved for so long, that was completely discombobulating, terrifying. You're just like, but the fear is the greatest kind of driver. The fear gives you a kind of a velocity, because it means you just work like a. I kind of look back now thinking, because I left with thinking, right, I'm going to do consultancy and the podcast, almost probably 50-50 split, and which I did do, but then the consultancy just became super stressful. And early doors, I was like, right, I'm going to reduce that right down and just go all in on the podcast. And yeah, I mean, that fear still drives me. I'm still thinking, well, I'm still thinking I need. So tomorrow I'm going to spend 6-7 hours just banging out cold emails to people. But that fear is still there. Do you know what I mean? But it's a good fear because it drives you. It's like a force of good, I think.
I think so. I think you do need a level of. I mean, there's obviously a level of too much stress where you can't see the wood from the trees, but you do need a level of, if I don't do this, bad things will happen. For me, that works quite well. When you have that fear, I think as you've just articulated quite well, where you're like, okay, actually, I need to carry this on and do it. I think it's been mentioned on other podcasts where you have the carrot and stick, don't you? So you have the carrot being, oh wow, this amazing thing. If I do this, it's going to be great. But also at the same time, the stick being, if I don't do this, these bad things will happen. I think for me, that's the bad things will happen is far more powerful. I don't know what you think about you.
Yeah, I think, but humans by default there's a negative bias. We're more worried about what can go wrong than. Hang on a sec. Sorry, my phone just.
Sorry.
That couldn't cut through or anything, did it? Did that cut
No,
through or anything? Oh, it's just weird. I don't know why it came up from my thing. Yeah, humans have a negative bias. So when we're kind of Neanderthals, whatever it is, in the savannas, and we've got a fire which is safety, and we've got some meat, and we've got some water. We're sat around that fire as a family or a tribe. We're not thinking, oh great, how amazing it is that we've got water and food, and we can have barbecue a fucking pig. We're thinking, is there a tiger out there who's going to pounce on us at any minute? So there's a human being. A human built in, it's the amygdala, it's the flight or flight imagination, fight or fight part of us, and there's a dance between the two, which is what I'm learning. So it's like you need to use the fear, you need to push that. This could all go wrong, and if you stop driving, I interviewed the founder of Warehouse Project, who's absolutely minted, drives Lambos, goes to Barbados, has a multi-million-pound festival, rave festival, or empire, I should say. He's like, I'm 52, I still drive harder than I've ever driven before, and it's all coming from a fear of it all just being fragile and collapsing. So I think, it is absolutely a fear, and absolutely use it as kind of petrol in the tank. But actually, if you're trying to go forward, you need to have the fear as petrol in the tank, but you also need to open your eyes and enjoy the countryside view, i.e., I've just met this sick guest. I've just put a podcast out. I've been consistent. I've just improved ever so slightly. It's all things on the drive to the destination that you can kind of enjoy, but it's the balance of the two. It's not both are right. Being absolutely shit scared is right. Slowing down and enjoying it is right. It's not binary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think I was speaking to Harry Turpin on a similar topic, because there's always that temptation to constantly want to improve, which is great, but then never actually enjoying the moments where you have achieved what you wanted to do. And I think as you've just highlighted, that balance between being super driven and doing all these very impressive things, but at the same time, even maybe on a weekly basis, just sitting back and going, yeah, that was pretty good this week. Did this, did that. Just trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, Chris Williams calls it the difference between being and becoming. And type A individuals are default becoming, and I had that. Well, look, I've just said tomorrow I'm going to spend 6 hours doing outreach. I just did a podcast with Oshin. Osh, call him Osh from the Devonshire. That has literally been a dream guest for 4 months. I've hustled super hard to get that over to get in front of him and actually do that. Was so nervous yesterday going into it. I didn't really sleep on the Sunday night. It was, but in terms of, I'm thinking, right, well, that's, you're nowhere near where you need to be. Get the fuck up and get on with it tomorrow and go and send out, as I said to you, that list at the beginning. Why have they not come on the podcast? And I've spoken to some of these people and they've just said no. Some people don't want to do podcasts, or there are other bigger podcasts out there, which is fine. But yeah, so it's it's dancing between those two. And even today, I went to the gym. I was just like, afterwards, I think that really helps with moving from the fear-based becoming to being, and being like, oh, okay. So often after a gym sesh, I'll go sit in the sauna and just chill. And actually, it's then that when I'm there, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, actually, I wanted to interview Osh for ages. Like, I'm so impressed with what they're doing with the Devonshire. Well done, mate. Well done. But then the other side of me is like which I'm thinking now is like, right, you got to get up and fucking go for it again. Like, I call it white belt mentality, which sounds really wanky, and it is really wanky, but it's for good and bad. So if you have a bad day, it's white belt mentality. Tomorrow you start again from the bottom and you go. If you've had a great day, it's like, don't get too carried away. It's like white belt mentality, start again tomorrow. I can't remember where I learned that, but that really helps. I think kind of stay an even keel between the being and the becoming. I've just nudged my nose there.
It's good. I think one thing as well you just mentioned is the fact you're sending a load of emails tomorrow. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think I would look at a podcast like yours, for example. It's been around for 4 years. It's objectively very successful within its field. I would have thought that someone's probably doing that for you, sending out emails, and / everyone is saying yes to who you're asking. It's funny that you're articulating to me that at probably a bit of a higher level, you're experiencing the same issues that I am, or experiencing the same challenges where some guests don't want to come on, some guests don't even reply. You're chasing people for a long while. I suppose that's half the fun in a way. So I think maybe at every level of podcasting, even if you go up to Diver CEO, Modern Wisdom, I don't know, even Joe Rogan, they're playing the same game just at a higher level where they're looking to get guests on and still getting rejected. So everyone's kind of in the same situation, just playing at different levels.
Yeah, for sure. So, and also I think Tim Ferriss talked about trying to get Neil Gaiman onto his podcast, who's the author. And he'd been a dream guest of Tim Ferriss for yonks. Tim had Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these massive guests on by this point, and it still took him 3 years to get Neil Gaiman. You know what I mean? So it's like, as you say, everyone's playing the same game. But then the other part of it is you do hit a lovely point, which again, this is me this is exact point, right? This happened today in the last couple of weeks. There's three people, and this is where it's quite cathartic doing this in terms of this being versus becoming. Yard Sale Pizza, based in London, absolutely love some of the most banging pizza around. Black Bear Burger, fucking sick. Literally, I love their burgers. They've reached out to me, being like, can we come on? But they've basically said, can we come on? Vincenzo's Pizza is another one. If you told me that 2 years ago, be like, yeah, these guys are going to reach out to you and say, can we come on? I've told you to fuck off. But I'm not thinking of that. I'm thinking of, well, why hasn't James Watt from Brewdog come on the podcast? Like, what do I need to do to make that happen? And that's that anxiety becoming, whereas actually pausing and saying, right, that's sick. Like, and I'm going to go up, I'm going to go and smash loads of smash burgers, eat some wings, have a couple of pints in one of, I personally believe, London's best burger. It's doing those big, in a world that's so addicted to becoming, you've got to try and somehow, or I've got to try and somehow focus on the being. But yeah, I think it doesn't change. You're constantly reaching for bigger, well, not necessarily bigger guests, just people who you want to chat to. I think I don't think there's a thing between big guests and small guests. I think you learn from everyone. Yeah. And I actually think some of my favorite conversations are the ones where the guests aren't quote unquote big guests. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that's definitely true. And it is funny, like that thing of you want to get somewhere, then you get there and you just think, well, what's the next thing? It's probably just baked into us as humans. But Dan, I want to do something a bit different. So, typically I'll have guests on and we'll heavily focus on how they started their business, what were the things they did in the first 100 days that in retrospect were just so integral to where they are today. And I absolutely love those conversations. I appreciate you're in a slightly different position and you maybe even in a better position, to be honest. You've spoken to hundreds of founders and just had some amazing conversations. So I think and I'm slightly putting you on the spot here, but I think you would be quite a good pool of knowledge to use to understand, if I was going to start, a drinks brand, let's call it a Will's energy drink. That, I mean, it's not hugely inventive, but let's call it Will's energy drink. I've just come up with the idea. I've quit my job. I've gone into the office. I've slammed my I think that's how you do it. Slam me P45 on the desk or take it. I don't quite know, but I've done that. I've walked out. This is my new life. Day zero. Damn, what should I be doing in the first 100 days to make sure that Will's energy drink has the best chance of success?
First thing, and this is just the summation of every guest I've spoken to, obviously to caveat before we jump in, different categories, different needs, different ways to skin the cat. I mean, you can have an example of Prime that's just gone and fucking well, people are now saying, oh, it's not doing so well, but like it went gangbusters to begin with. Yeah. That's exhibit A. You've got exhibit B, which is more the money life route, starting at farmers markets and working your way up slowly but surely. You've got others who just raise a bucket load of money and just again go gangbusters. There's people who've been doing it for building a gifting business for years and years and years and years, and then they decide to go into retail. So there's just a caveat, there's loads of different ways on this, but I'm kind of do a summation of what I think would work, or thread the needle between each and every one of the guests I've interviewed. So first thing is product. Every person I've spoken to is, so many people want to start a brand and they want to do all the bells and whistles and the sexy packaging, and that's the fun bit. The name, coming up with the brand mission, coming up with the, hiring the team, getting the office in Shoreditch, blah, 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 ordering the merchandise. That's all great, but without a product that tastes demonstrably different and better, you just, that's the first thing out the block, is getting the product so demonstrably different and better. You can look amazing on shelf, you pick it up, if it tastes shit, you're not going back. I'd much rather have a product that tastes a gazillion times better but doesn't look so sexy than a product that looks like literally like it's been designed by Steve Jobs but tastes like shit. So the first thing you've got to do is be maniacally obsessed with the taste of the product. Now, say it's Willy's drinks, how do you do that? The first thing is a gazillion iterations. So you're looking for a thing called product market fit. It's like it's synonymous. It's a tech term from Silicon Valley, but it's swooned over to the UK and is synonymous in food, whereby you are presenting to, I would literally ask your family and friends, and also do a farmer's market or a market in your local town. And what you're trying to ascertain is this any good? Is this shit or is this good? What Innocent did is they had their drinks at, I think there's the famous story of the 3 bins being like, should we quit our jobs? Bin 1, yes. Bin jobs. Sorry, it's been a long day. It's quite late recording this.
You're doing well.
bin 2 is, go back to your day job. Prime example of just trying to get that small feedback on the taste. Absolutely essential. Green and Black did the same thing. Arguably Money Life, our branding at the beginning, i.e. packaging and stuff, wasn't the best in the world, but the product was absolutely insane. So I think having a product that is different. I think doing this, the obvious, it sounds obvious, but literally going and looking at every single product in your category, lining them up and just chasing it, saying, okay, how can we make something different? How can we? I think Perfect had done this with energy drinks. So if you were, I would buy every energy drink under the sun. Half the reason Perfect Ted's done so well is they got every energy drink and thought, okay, well, how can we create something different that gives a different type of energy? Matcha. Well, matcha, no one really likes. No one's really fucking with matcha on a kind of building in. Where's my thumb? I thought my thumb came up. No one's really messing with matcha. So that gives us a point of difference. first thing. Does it taste good? So they went through loads of iterations making it taste good and different. And I think half the reason they're super successful is they focus on the liquid and that actually tastes really delicious. So that's the first thing. Focus on product. Second thing is, how are you different? And I think USPs, like unique selling points, are quite surface level. They're up here. They kind of target the conscious mind, and everyone kind of waxes lyrical about how we're more prebiotic, probiotic, pragmabotic, whatever. But actually, you want to go deeper into how are you so different that you create your own category of one. Category of one is what the marketing books say. Create your category of one. How do you do that? And Alex Smith, who was a guy I interviewed yesterday, really interesting guy. Is he? Sorry for jumping up there. He basically said you need to find something you disagree with people on, and when you find that, it really pushes you away. It's the whole blue ocean strategy. You need to find it, get away from the red crowded oceans, find the blue ocean where no one's playing. So your point of difference is, there's a whole myriad of different ways you can find your point of difference and disagreement. I think Liquid Death, what they're doing is fascinating in terms of, okay, we are not like other water brands. We're going to act and be different. We're going to act more like a kind of punk funk, more like an aggressive Monster Energy or Red Bull or craft beer brand. So that's your surface level point of difference. And I don't know if you know what your Liquid Death, the brand Liquid Death.
I haven't heard of it. No, what is? Oh, wait, actually, I think I have heard of it. Yeah,
it's like
yeah. Go on.
It's water, but it's if you Google Liquid Death when you're listening to this, Google Liquid Death, and it's kind of illustrates this point nicely. But if we go deeper down into what's the point of disagreement, creates a much bigger gulf between you and your competition. They disagree with Evian, Fiji Water, and Volvic, who are quite worthy, virtuous, and kind of bland, if I'm honest. Their point of disagreement is, we're going to be we're going to disagree. We're not going to be boring. We're not going to be bland. We're going to act like a rock brand, and you're going to kind of hate us for that. Hate and love are the same thing, but creating that point of difference is super, super, super important. And back, it's the same thing with the testing in your first 100 days. I would literally have 10 different names of say Will's energy drink. So you could have Willy Wonka's energy drink, Willy's watermelon, whatever, Willy's or Will's. Sorry, I work for do a bit of work at the chocolate brand, so I always say Wilfy Wonka as a play on Willy Wonka. But I would have a gazillion different brand names. Maybe not a gazillion, that's a bit too much, but like 5. Boil it down to 5 that you really love. Have 5 different kind of colors, and I would be going to doing just hammering the markets. I'd be doing markets as much as you can to solicit feedback. Is like, do you think this is good? I would be doing markets where your core customer is. So say you're trying to sell. Say your energy drink is for our age, right? Young professionals living in Amsterdam or London or wherever. And what I think you can make the mistake of is, you can think, right, I'm going to go to as many farmers, going to test this hypothesis of yours at a farmer's market in the Cotswolds, where you'll get a load of old biddies who've been like, I don't like it. Well, it's like, well, that's the wrong market. So going to finding the right market, like having a hunch or a gut feel of like, this is where I should be selling my product. That is kind of, that's where you want to elicit that same feedback. And what you're trying to do there is find product market fit. And I think so many brands in that first 100 days, they kind of overlook the product, and they overlook the the packaging and the name and all those things. And look, everything can be tweaked, but it's much easier to tweak the branding and the packaging when you've already got something that's really, really good. Whereas I think this happened with Harry at the Savorists. They did their product market fit bit way later down the line. So he'd got his bars into, and he'll be the first, this is not me slagging him off, like we're very good mates.
Yeah.
He got his bars. He started with bars. He didn't really think, does this taste really good? He didn't ask, does this customer really, what he did, but he was like, he's like me. He's like, right, let's fucking go and let's go and sell. Let's go. The founders want to rush and they want to get straight into the sales side of things, which I agree with. He did a sterling job, got it into Whole Foods, Planet Organic, and a few other places. But then he realized that it didn't taste so good. And did the consumer actually get what a savory bar was? He's then gone and reinvented and created Crunchits, which are absolutely phenomenal. People should definitely try them, and it's working. He's found that product market fit, and Crunchits makes sense. It's got the point of difference. It's more boisterous as a brand. It's more rambunctious as a brand versus, say, Propercorn, who's quite, more kind of female. It's founded by a female brand, but not saying it's just for females, of course, but it is kind of more that ilk. And I think that's a darling example of someone who's taken a long time doing it, like a year. If I was in my first 100 days, in the first 20 days, I'd be trying as much as I can. So does this taste different? So different that people are like, I've never tried anything like that before. And does it taste better? First thing. Second thing is, how are we different? How you answer that question is you look at your category and say, how do we disagree with our competitors? Is the second thing.
I just want to just come in there. So the point, I quite like that though, the point of difference, because it's not wholly a marketing thing, is it? From what you're saying. So for on the water example, Liquid Death, the point of difference isn't just how we're positioning ourselves in terms of how we look and the messaging we're putting out, but is it also the products itself that you're trying to differentiate?
Yeah. So Oatly is a great example because Oatly weren't competing with other oat milks necessarily. They were competing with milk, actual milk. So they were like, we taste different to milk. We're like kind of maybe creamier and oatier. It's demonstrably, if that's how you say it, different.
Demonstrably, almost.
Demonstrably, yeah. It's been a long day, son.
No, I think you've done.
And the branding and everything it stands for is different as well. Like it's they've said, okay, what do we disagree with? And I think that's a great example of something that is so different. Tyrrell's crisps, another great example back in the day. But pre-Tyrrell's crisps, there was no crisps made for wanky Chelsea hummus and prosecco kind of dinner parties. Do you know what I mean? Where everyone gets a bit randy. And what Tyrrell's did is they came in and thought, okay, we're going to make a premium crisps. The product is demonstrably, there we go, jackpot, demonstrably better.
Can I just say you've smashed that?
Demonstrably better in that, you had all that Walker's shit that was about for ages. Like, who's going to crack open cheese and onion at a dinner party? It'd be a bit naff, wouldn't it? But you feel like you're at a kid's sort of play date. Do you know what I mean? So,
or invite Lineker along. You don't want that either.
Yeah. And what William did is he thought, right, we're going to make a thicker crisp. It's going to be made from real potatoes. We're going to put more seasoning on, and we're going to put different flavors of seasoning on. So that's the product. The product tasted different. It was a thicker crisp. It was from natural potatoes, and it had more seasoning. That is the product difference. The branding difference. Okay, so crisps are ubiquitous. They are for walkers, etc., for literally everyone up and down the country. We're going to be different by creating a packaging called Tyrrells. It's going to have, my friend Perry did the branding for Tyrrells. It's going to speak to a different audience. It's going to be like, this is the middle class, posh, crisp. This is the occasion we're going to target, which is these kind of dinner parties or like just that premium occasion. And we're going to stand for something different in that we're not walkers. We have these points of difference. And I think that's another example of someone who's just asked those hard questions of where do we disagree? So we disagree that we're not for everyone. We disagree that crisps should be cheap. We disagree that crisps should be thin. We disagree that crisps should have kind of meager amounts of seasoning on them. And all that's doing, if you see here, if this is the category, those questions are pushing it this way. And that's how you get a Tyrrells, and that's how you begin to build that household brand. So doing those things as early as you can is 100% it. Yeah. And then I can go on to the sales side of things if you want, or...
Well, no, those two, I was just thinking about them as you were saying, because it's always that thing where you look back and you go, well, obviously the product has to be great. Like that's like, you could ask anyone and be like, yeah, the product has to be great. But it's so true. The amount of instances where founders will just focus on marketing and the like jazzy parts, not the core product. So it's far easier said than done to actually just focus on the product at the beginning. But as you say, that is the baseline of a great product, is the fact it tastes good, and you'll come back to it again. You could, for example, if you just didn't give a shit about retention, just sell it once to half the world and then you're fine, but no one's coming back. But I think the key thing is retention, isn't it? For people to keep on coming back again.
The question I always ask is, what if I listed your 5 favorite big brands? So these are some of mine. Ben and Jerry's. I fucking love fish food. Cadbury's out the fridge. CDM, Cadbury's Dairy Milk, simple but effective. I love McCoy's. McCoy's, depending on the day, like cheese and onion one's banging, makes your breath stink a bit, but they also do a rib one, which is extraordinary, very delicious. McCoy's, the reason I love them is they're thick and they're super crispy. Drinks, I'm a Diet Coke fiend, love that. I'm trying to think one more. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would be the 5th one that I really like? Trying to think of an example that I really like. Bagels. So New York bagels. They are all household brands that are like, go to any supermarket up and down the country and you've got those brands in there. If I take away the label and put in a white package, every single one of those in a white tub and gave it to you, you'd still think, fuck me, that's delicious. Whereas if I was to get some, not necessarily all Challenger brands, but some Challenger brands want to be the Ben and Jerry's. They want to do the B Corp. They want to do create the sexiness around it, which is the storytelling. That's the fun bit. But if they just spent a bit more time focusing on this, then they would unlock that kind of. It just makes it much easier to not have to go back and do what Harry did and have to reinvent the product and reposition yourself. It's ag that's further down the line. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's fair. And look at them now. They're in all good EasyJet flights, I think, within Europe. So if you're on an EasyJet flight, make sure you look at the menu. They're on there.
Yeah, 100%.
So we've gone through first 100 days. So we've talked about product market fit, making sure the product is banging and as good as it can be, and focus less on the bits around the outside, like the marketing, the branding, etc. And also points of difference. So how can, if I was going to create this energy drink, what is my contradiction versus the rest of the market? What don't I think the rest of the market understand that I understand, that I want to get across to people? So I think there's 2 really good core things there. But should I be doing anything else?
Yeah, well, then you need to get sales and money in through the door. So the way, and this is again through loads of mistakes I made at Manny Life, and I see hear brands do it, founders tell me about it differently. So what most founders want to do is they're like, right, we need loads of distribution. I need to go and get into 1,000 Sainsbury's stores, 300 Co-op stores, get into Selfridges, Harrods, Harvey Nicks, and the more stores we're in, the more we're going to sell. You know, if your rate of sale is 5 per week in a Whole Foods store, then imagine if you got into 1,000 Sainsbury's stores, it's going to be 5 times 1,000 stores. We're going to make way more money. And the thing is, not all distribution is created equal. So you're going to sell way more in a Whole Foods store than you are in a Sainsbury's store in the fuck end of nowhere. And I think that's the first kind of thing the biggest learning I got is you trying to go for too much distribution too quickly is a danger, because you're thinking, oh my God, get into all these stores. Well, one, most people don't know about you outside of London, first thing. Two, the amount of ag and cost of actually getting it into each and every store. Like you don't, Co-op don't just place an order and Willy's energy drink just lands on the shelves. It doesn't work like that. It's more of a sorry, this thing's just moving around. It's a much longer game, and you've got to check availability. There's just way more cost. So the supermarkets will come, but they're much further down the line. You know, some of the best brands, they all started smashing the indies and wholesale. They started, Tyrrell's did the same thing. He was exclusively in Selfridges and Harrods, didn't want it to go into a big brand immediately, took his time. Take your time. But for the first 100 days, how do you get the proof of concept thinking this thing is going to sell? So I would literally do it by postcode. So I would say Southwest London. I'm not going to focus anywhere else, but I'm going to get Willy's. Also, because Will Chase has actually got a drinks brand called Willy's now. That's why I'm getting confused.
I think Willy's is better, man. Let's go with Willy's energy drink.
We'll go with Willy's energy drink. And I would say to you, Will, I'd say, right, get every stockist in Clapham, Earlsfield, Balham, Wimbledon, Southwest London is basically what I'm trying to say. And you want to get into 15, just have 15 stores. You want to activate them. So you want to go in, give every single store manager and team a product, tell them a story, get them. They are your silent sales team when you don't have anyone there. So if you get a store in Wandsworth Road that absolutely loves Willy's, and you're not there because you can't, because you're a one-man band, and they say, oh, what are you getting with that meal deal? Or not meal deal, what are you getting with that sarnie? Why don't you try Willy's? The guy's lovely, blah, blah, blah. So I'd activate it. I'd get POS in all the stores. So a point of sale, so that's some sort of like storytelling at the shelf edge. Like 90% of all sales come at the shelf edge. I would book a gazillion sampling sessions and sample like fucking crazy. And when you're doing the sampling sessions, ask the same questions you're asking in steps 1 and 2. Product market fit. Does it taste good? Does this brand make sense? Because then when you want to get into supermarkets, you can take all this data and say, look, we got into 15 stockists in Southwest London. We built a rate of sale over 3 months. It's 100 days. We've got 3 months to 16 per store per week, or something. I was probably not going to be that, but maybe like 6 per store per week. That is valuable data. And that shows that you've actually got some meat to the proverbial bone here. Like there's an idea. What else would I be doing in terms of getting those stockists? So I'd be trying to get in each of those 15 stores, I'd be trying to get some secondary space, which you can wangle for free if you constantly go in and see those stores. The reason we're shackling it by geography is if you try and go for the whole of London, it's just a nightmare. I tried to do it with Moneylife. You try and get in, but you can walk around Southwest London or hop in a car and within 10, 15 minutes. Whereas trying to do Shoreditch, then Dulwich, then St. John's Wood, you're just going to be screwed. So 15 delis, get an amazing rate of sale. You get the amazing rate of sale through store manager love, store team love, sampling like crazy to drive trial, point of sale on shelf to tell the story. Secondary space. So that secondary space basically means, say you've got your drink is in, maybe it doesn't work in drinks because it's chilled, but yeah, let's just for argument's sake. So you got the drinks in the chiller. I would then try and make a little stack of somewhere else in the store
Mm.
And you'll get this through a great relationship with the store manager of Willy's, because then what you want to do is say, Beatrice, for example, is not walking past the chiller, is walking down the aisle for baking soda, but she sees Will's drink. You're getting a whole new shopper, which drives sales. So secondary space, out of all the learnings, drive sales. And you can, if you go to the indies and it goes to the wholesalers, you can wangle it for free. So I'd be doing that. So that's kind of the next step. So step 3. Step 4 is going after your brand builder accounts, which is your Harrods, Selfridges, Harvey Nicks. Harrods, Selfridges, Harvey Nicks. What's the other one? Harrods, Selfridges, Harvey Nicks. Harrods, Selfridges. I think that's it.
That's the main. I mean, there's some up north that are also kind of on par, but in London for sure, I think it's those.
Oh, Fortnum Mason, that was it.
Okay. Touche.
Yeah, touche. So those get on the phone, get in front of those. You can actually win a listing, like, providing you've done steps 1, steps 2, step 3. You can win a listing relatively straightforward. They're always looking for new avant-garde brands. So get on the phone to them, and also go and sit in their office. Go and just get in front of them somehow. I would be trying or initiating conversations with 1 or 2 wholesalers, because when you're in those 15 stockists, you'll be delivering it all yourself. You'll be invoicing each individual store yourself. There'll be a gazillion amounts of admin, but this is slightly done. This is probably day 70, right? So I would then be going to if you could get 15 stockists absolutely fly in Southwest London, at this point, you've got a clear, different product that tastes banging. You're in Selfridges, you're sampling there. You've then got a very good case to go to a wholesaler and say, look, we'll give you 15 stores now. The rate of sale is 6. You'll make this much revenue off these stores. We want to get into the catalogue and we want to get moving, essentially. That's what I would be doing. So those are sort of the 4 points to really in those first 100 days. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Other stuff you can do. So what Amelia did very well at Bold Bean Co. is she created a closed Instagram page where she was documenting the journey. And what that does in terms of what we were talking about at the beginning versus this works on several things. One, you can get the feedback you want from your tribe, whatever you call it. So you say you're thinking of like a bit of packaging, you can say, this is Amelia literally did. She said, okay, I'm thinking of these 2 labels. Which one do you think's best, A or B? And you can do a poll on Instagram. So what this little closed Facebook, closed Instagram closed friends thing does means you can get a core audience of diehard fans who are with you since day one, which can give you this feedback. Point 1. Point 2 is it documents the journey. So when you document the journey, you take loads of pictures, because it's all these little things that you'll look back on and think, fuck, like that, a bit like, the being versus becoming. So when you are having a rough day, you can look back on all those pictures and think, oh, that was, I got through that. Third thing is in terms of just smashing and getting hold of influencers, having a Instagram presence really helps with that. And actually DMing buyers. And I now know a lot of brands who actually have their sales reps have like a Lucky Saint, Gemma Instagram page, because so much business, especially with the indies and cafes, is done on DMs. So those would be my points, mate, for your first. If I was trying to start or help with Will's energy, that's what I'd be doing, I think.
Yeah, that's a very well structured path, I think. I was going through that almost like playing out in my head. I might have to start this business now, Dan. I don't think I've got much of a choice given that the advice you've just given is so clear and and forward driving. But yeah, I think that's super clear, mate. Like, I like the fact you did the steps. The points of difference thing has stood out in my head a lot. I like the bits around the sales and having that second sales point within the store. So someone that, for example, Beatrice is getting baking soda wouldn't normally go down that aisle. She's going down another aisle, so it further exposes your product. But even having a relationship with a store manager where you're very friendly with them, you can get that additional exposure. I think is a really good point. But the insight that you've given, I've definitely learned. I didn't have a huge insight as to, okay, you need to do this first and then that first, and then you have a bit of a business case to go to wholesalers, etc. That I think is just a really simple and clear way of doing it. So, mate, I just want to say thanks for your time. I thought that was very, very insightful. I certainly enjoyed the conversation. It's a new one as well, having someone else that's doing a podcast. It's been pretty therapeutic for me, to be honest, to speak to you, mate. So appreciate your time.
Mate, well, I've absolutely loved it. And yeah, if you need anything, just give me a shout. I'm happy to help. And also, I think that on that point of difference thing, just quickly, that's not the easiest thing in the world to get your head around. So I recommend, this is a shameless plug, checking out the Hungry episode with Alex Smith. He's just been on third time yesterday. He's like a mastermind at how to find these things out. But yeah, mate, like if you need anything, give me a shout. I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. And before we go, so Hungry, you can find it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, anywhere else?
LinkedIn. Actually, no, you can't find it on LinkedIn. That's stupid. _hungry.pod on Insta. Yeah, but Spotify and Apple, and yeah, wherever you get your podcasts, as every podcast now says. But
Get
yeah,
your
mate,
podcasts.
I really appreciate it, you having me on, and it was interesting just reframing. Okay, what would you do in 100 days? It's a great frame for a podcast, and I wish you all the best of luck with it, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you, as always, for listening at home or wherever you may be, maybe walking around the park. Thank you to Dan Pope as well for your time. That was epic, mate. Thank you so much. Next week, I speak with the founder of an online recruitment platform for the startup space. You're not going to want to miss this one. Trust me. That's it from me. See ya later. Roll the credits.